What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Football Friday edition of Backyard Play with Q. I'm your host, as always, Rich Quinones, and as always, we are a sponsor from our wonderful friends over at Played Against Sports, 1450 Clements Ridge Road in Deptford, New Jersey. By the way, they've got ridiculous golf merchandise and gear. They got a bunch of Cleveland wedges and drivers. I mean, it's perfect weather up and down the East Coast. Might get a little rain this weekend, but you get the Indian summer, September and October. Use sports equipment. Trade in as well, good value on the dollar. But for you golfers out there that tune into BYP, definitely give them a visit as well. Flexible store hours, and you can walk in. Speaking of walking in and walking out with a little money, our guy, the prop, kind enough to join us. And I don't know, I was getting a little worried. I said to myself, hold on a second, Green Bay, young quarterback, here we go. Thank you, Sean McVay, for screwing us, even though I teased down Dallas and the 49ers. I mean, my goodness, prop. A couple shekels in the pocket this past weekend, but always good to talk to you again, brother. How are you?
Good, great. Was a little under the weather with allergies a little bit earlier in the week. I've got that, I think, all taken care of. Last week, like you just mentioned, was a big week, a good week for teasers.
Yes, it was.
If you're teasing down off of key numbers from 7 and 3, shoot, I mean, all the big favorites won. Even the iffy one that I thought, which was San Fran, because you don't like the, that historical in division, laying more than a touchdown type team going on the road, and that was usually reserved for a team like the Broncos when they had Manning, or New England in their heyday, where they were just going, they'd win regardless of where they played. And then you had ourselves, famous gambling moments of Sean McVay kicking a field goal with.
Again, I teased it down. It didn't bother me.
Right. But it's just funny for people that had 7 and, had the Trisha 7 or 7, because that line did open 7.
Yeah.
It was 7 for a full day. It went to 7.5. It was 8 for a second, and then settled at 7.5. And I think at game time there were a few 7s still out there, but either way, San Fran's up 10. McVay kicks the field goal. His answer was what's a point differential, which I think is like the 6 or 7 tiebreaker. Not that big a deal, but they're kind of in a spot. If you throw a Hail Mary and somebody gets hurt,
yeah,
I don't have a problem with it. Because the idea is to score the most points, but it was pretty interesting to see that, though. It just adds some fodder for gamblers to say, what is this? What's McVay's trying to cover?
Yeah. Well, how about catching the Giants money line, right, when they're down 21? Or I'll do you one better, the Washington and the Denver game. Now, I took Washington on the money line. I told you that because, I'm not a fan of Denver, and I think Russ is cooked, and Peyton and this and that. But you're right. I mean, the outcomes, you can go from being plus 150, 175, 200 to all of a sudden down, minus 125 going into, say, 4 o'clock games or the 8 o'clock game. Then you got to make that choice. Am I doubling up? Or am I chasing? Or am I going to sit, regroup, and maybe hit the Monday night game? So, yeah, from that standpoint, a play here and there. You didn't have to worry about that last night too much. Giants, again, spit the bit. I mean, I'm really starting to think if they don't win against Seattle, I might start leaning them. I pulled up their schedule to kind of figure out, all right, how many games is this team going to be favored in? And they still got Miami, Buffalo, Dallas again. They got the Eagles twice. They got Washington twice. I just don't. I'm not a believer right now in this team. And from a gambling standpoint, they're home against Seattle. Maybe they're a slight favorite. I doubt it. I can see Seattle being a 2.5 point favorite. Miami, Buffalo, Washington, they're going to be dogs in those games.
Yeah, the Giants are in a tough spot. They were in a tough spot anyway, even before getting banged up. It was good. It was one of the most consensus things. It was, the Giants were going to regress. It was almost like a cliche.
100%.
Their total was as low as what, 7.5
Seven
in
and
a
a
lot of
half.
places, and uh, I do have somewhat on under, but I mean that's not really indicative of how I feel about the Giants. I usually play mostly unders anyway because there's too many overs in the total win. So I look for reasons uh, normally to play under. I try to fade because of the parity NFL. I look for reasons to fade the previous year's playoff teams, and you really, since the realignment, you really haven't done poorly if you've gone down that path, especially if you were able to throw out the elite. So you say, I'm not going to try to fade Belichick. I'm not going to try to fade Manning's Broncos. I'm not going to try to fade the Legion of Doom over there. It's when they had that in Seattle. And then you kind of focus on everybody else, like maybe the pretend. Now it's almost like, do you throw like KC? I did not this year. I did play. I thought KC's number was a little high. I played under. Not because I don't think KC is not the elite of the league, but because I do think this league catches up, and I think that, and guys get hurt. Guys get hurt on the really good teams. They get hurt on the teams like the Giants, and it creates more parity for the league. Now, I don't want this to be a race to the bottom. Like the Sunday night game is the Raiders Steelers. I'm not sure we need to see Raiders Steelers, but we're going to have to see some. There's going to be some clunkers in there, and that might not be a terrible game. But the NFL's got a little bit of an issue, Rich. They put the Jets are going to be over prime time because of the Rodgers thing.
And you can only flex X amount of games too. That's the other problem.
Yeah, so we're gonna be in for some in between. And my hope is that somebody, or one or two teams, kind of rise to the top. And I think as far as being good and being entertaining, and I think you've already seen that, or we've already seen that with Miami. Miami on prime time. I mean, I thought something was wrong with my TV. They looked like they were on speed mode. They got Miami offense.
He's a prolific passer. He's going to be a prolific passer. He's going to throw for 5,000 yards a season, this kid.
And he's very quick. I get it that you have to be quick release with when you're playing against Belichick's defense. But man, they look good. And the interesting part about that is they dominated the game, and they still were the Patriots were only one possession.
I know.
Out of that game. So that shows you, I think, even in game, how close these teams are. With that being said, I know you're down on Denver.
6.5.
I think it's a little bit of an overlay, to tell you the truth. I think it looks too easy. We're getting suckered a little bit into this because we got to see Miami, how great they could play. And conversely, you see Denver gets up 21-3 and they can't hold lead. I
don't like the makeup of the team. There's something about that team. It is not a good marriage between Peyton and Russell Wilson. He wants a pure pocket passer. He doesn't want a quarterback that's pulling the ball down, scrambling. I can't.
I think it all comes down to Russell Wilson, to tell you the truth. I think I don't think it's a scenario where I think I speculated that this is why Carson Wentz wasn't after his injury. Wentz had some issues. I think it's the reason why the Vikings haven't been well. There's this disconnect between the quarterback. If the quarterback is perceived as like aloof, and Russell Wilson took that to the nth degree with his own bodyguards and his own. He tried to be almost like Brady Light with his own guy in the clubhouse, and I think he miscalculated. It really turned off a lot of the Denver, the guys that need to be protecting him, his teammates.
He did it in Seattle. So, I do the pod with Brandon Jacobs, 27 Q, and he told me, listen, he knew for a fact that at the time, Seattle players would text him and be like, "Can you believe this effing guy? I can't get a hold of him. I have to go through a secretary." Like players, teammates don't have the quarterback's contact number, right? He's just that guy. And I think he's a fraud. And plus, I don't trust their offensive line. Now, can I, with comfortability and confidence, say Miami's going to cover that spread? No, but is that an opportunity to maybe get sucked in and tease it down where I just need Miami to win the game and bookend it with another game? Possibly.
It's not wrong. I know that when I saw the opening lines, your first instinct is to go, "Wow, okay." I mean, it's kind of where I had it anyway. I had Miami.
So you like Denver money line then? You like Denver money line.
Well, no, I like Denver plus the 6.5. I just think it's a slight over. It's not actually a big play, but if I had, I just think that, the NFL has these weeks, especially early on, where everybody gets too excited over what they see, and then too down.
Yeah.
ESPN ran the thing, of the 0-2 teams. Who are you most worried about? And obviously you point to the Bengals.
Yeah.
How serious is Burrow's injury? That line opens up late Sunday, even in a Monday, I believe. I'm trying to think where I was at Monday, but that line opened 6.5.
Now it's down to 3.
7.5. It was 7.5. Of course, opening line, the limits are really small. This is a nuance that's lost on a lot of people that are supposed to be sports betting people. Is they'll say, "Yeah, I have the opening line of a total or a 7 in the Rams game," but you have to realize, or your public has to realize, those limits are 1/50th of what they should be. I have a Circa hat on. Circa will take good early limits, but it's nowhere near what they take when the market's more mature, even on Wednesday. So with that being said, the opening line can be moved with only a few bets, but it is out there for people to shoot at. And somebody posted a 7. I never would have posted a 7.5. I don't care if Burrow was 100%. But it went to 6.5 right away. But now look at it. Now that the thinking is, it hasn't been announced yet that Burrow might not even play, and that's the way it looks. And I'm not sure how much further that'll drop. Cincinnati's 2.5. I like the Rams anyway. I do like the Rams as a leg in a teaser play, and if you like to play those where you get them getting 8.5. But I like the Rams in the game anyway.
Are you going to wait?
It's one situations we're too high on one, we're too low. I mean, San Fran's decree is we saw it last night again, as if we didn't know. They're not going to turn the ball over. They're going to play really structured and sound offense and defense.
I was just going to ask
you, barring an injury, they're going to go. It'll be disappointing if they don't at least make the championship.
100%. Are you going to wait to see where that line, where you believe it'll close out that Cincinnati game?
I don't think, but I think it's already.
You think it's pretty much because
worst line, but I think even though that it's mature, I like. I think the Rams as part of the teaser and even maybe even in a money line play. Is worth a bet, because I don't think Burrow is gonna play. But back to that question that was put for, like, what 0-2 team is in trouble? Obviously, the Bengals do not want to be 0-3. But they've had 2 really good years, right? And where they had a really good Super Bowl. They could have won that Super Bowl.
Of course.
And to me, they were the better team than Kansas City last year in that championship game for a big part of it.
Yeah.
There was a couple calls didn't go their way, and it's like they're right on the cusp. Are they going to take a step back? Not because of anything they've done with play calling, but simply because of injuries. And I don't want to jump the gun because we are in September.
Yeah.
But you don't want to start 0-3. They did start 0-2 last year, I believe, just off the top of my head.
But not in that division. Not in that division, right?
You don't want to start – yeah. Try because that division is – I mean, sure, it goes down that division is too tough.
Yeah, I know.
The division's too tough. Obviously, it's tough. I think we catch a break on the Steelers. I think the Steelers are a little bit overrated. And then we go back to the other team is the Chargers.
Yep.
What do you think of them?
They're the biggest enigma in the history of enigmas. Now you're putting me in a bad spot here, because I'm a Minnesota. I'm a captain with the dog run away with the ticket. Here's the thing with Minnesota. You go to 0-3, and the Jets are looking at a quarterback, and Cousins is going to walk. Sure as hell, the Jets are going to call it Minnesota, right? Because you're going to try to maybe figure out a way. I don't know if Cousins has that no trade or not, but I don't have.
You would think. You would think that's what happen. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I think. Sure. I don't know. The Jets staring at 1-6, Rich. I mean, it could happen.
Even with Rodgers, I had them coming out of the gate 2-4, 2-5. Listen, if they can't beat New England, because New England's owned them, if they can't beat New England and that quarterback, it says a lot. But going back, and we'll get to the game in a second, but going back to what you were saying, the Chargers should have beat Tennessee. They should have won. So now all of a sudden your season's 1-1. Now you're 0-2. Whoever loses this game is pretty much eliminated from playoffs.
Chargers are desperate in this game. I actually think the Chargers are the better team. I've never seen a coach be this polarizing, though. I mean, Hugh Jackson didn't get this much hate from, media members, ex-NFL coaches, ex-NFL players. I get last year what Peyton was trying to do. Peyton wanted that job. I don't think if they fired Staley last year that the Spanish family was going to pay what Peyton wanted anyway. So I thought anybody who thinks that the Peyton was going to be the new Charger coach, I didn't buy it. We spoke last year about it.
You said it.
Number one, because you're going to have to fire the GM because it's the GM's third coach, and he's on his last year's contract, their package deal. And then Herbert is still – you don't fire a head coach, usually Herbert, in the second full year. You want to give that third year. You finish it out, they're going to hear – the Charger fans are one of the most volatile. I thought the East Coast guys were bad, but the Charger fans are just. But I get it; they've lost tons of close games. It's like almost like a habit. Yeah, they lose consistently in the fourth quarter. With that, you're going to hear a lot if they start out 0-3. I don't think you get to that. I think the Vikings will start at 0-3. It kind of makes more sense where now you start to see the exit for Cousins. Let's take the Vikings last year. Could they have gotten any luckier? They were the luckiest team by any metric that you use. They won tons of one-score games. They really had a weak schedule. It just makes sense for them this year to start out 1-6, as opposed to the Chargers, where I think if the Chargers win this game this week, you really right the ship. If they somehow come out and are able to go 3-2 in their first 5, all of a sudden the first 2 games are forgotten about. But I have not heard one word positive about Staley, which kind of is incredible. Somebody always has a backer. Everybody hates him. No, I take that back. Everybody hated Chip Kelly.
Yes.
That was universal. Everybody hated Chip. And here I was contrarian. I thought Chip Kelly, I get it. He had a lot of bad points, but his offense of speed, more plays, that was kind of copied a little bit throughout the NFL.
Yeah,
if they were running 12 or 15 more plays than you were, you're trying to get 4 or 5 big plays a game. His goal was, I have more of a chance to get them the more plays I run.
Remember, the knock on him was when you have the drives where sometimes it's 3 and out, you put the defense right back on the field. I never thought he was going to last more than 3-4 years in the NFL as a head coach. And, you know this, right? They had those losses against Tampa Bay, Detroit, and Miami, and he stood up there and he couldn't take the bullets. Same thing with the coach.
He couldn't. And one of the teams that supposedly is really on board with analytics, and of course, analytics is thrown out 18 different. It's not just about going on 4th down. It's about what data you're going to find out and use to your advantage. Yep. So it could be in player development. It could be on-field game reactions, not punting. The Eagles are all on board with that, from the GM to the owner. They're all – and I think that Chip Kelly wasn't, that kind of pushed him to the side. And it leads me to the hate on Staley. I almost get the feeling that Staley has been back and forth with, some really questionable calls that I thought were against analytics. Like last week, he had a 4th and 2 in Tennessee's territory, up 4.
Yeah,
and he punted.
Well, San Fran did the same thing last night. San Fran had a 4th and short, and they punted too against a bad team that wasn't able to move the football.
I get the feeling that the coaches. I always get the feeling that Staley has said, I'm going to go on my gut because I know that their GM is analytically driven, and usually you would think it's the owners that need convincing of some of these things, because you don't want to run a 4th and 2 and not get it.
No. Or
like Peterson did a few years back. But I remember everybody was all over him when he ran. He was 4th and 9, and he went for it, and Wentz took a sack. And in the Super Bowl year, the year he got caught, and everybody was like, "What is he doing?" Well, you're not supposed to take the sack. 4th and 9's okay. You just because there's more of a chance you're going to punt in the end zone. I get it, but usually it's a hard sell to the owners. If the owners are on board and the coaches are kind of backing off, and I think that's what's going on with the Chargers. It's the only thing I can figure out. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why he's so disliked. The other reason I think he maybe have this air of arrogance. But aren't you supposed to have an air of arrogance?
You're supposed to be successful. You're supposed to. And, you watch football long enough, when they have 3rd and 9 and they run it for 4 yards, right around the 45-50, 99.9% as a fan, you're saying they did that because they're going to go for it on 4th down. I mean, it's just common sense.
Sure. I like it. I like we mentioned before the non-reactive guys like Sirianni plans for that. A guy like McCarthy is reactive to that. Like, oh, it's 4th and 4. What do we do? Like he gets so it could end up hurting Dallas down the road. But this is a big game Monday for the Eagles. We'll segue into that. I actually like Tampa in the game. It's one of my plays this week. I like Tampa +5.
Outright or +5?
I have them +5 just in case something goofy happens. I'll take the 5 gladly. I could see. Remember last year, the Eagles went on the road in Arizona. It looked like an easy game on paper.
Well, Murray does the boneheaded play.
It turned out to be a more difficult game, and the Eagles won, and they got a win, and they escaped, and they ran out. It could look like that, or it could look like a close win by Tampa. Either way, I like Tampa this week, and then you're going to hear a lot about you're going to have 3 straight games of
subpar offense.
Now we're 2-1. Is the shine off of Hurts?
Yep.
Especially if Dallas has Arizona this week, especially if Dallas goes in and busts out a 31-10 victory. Now you have Dallas and San Fran sitting 3-0, and the Eagles back to the pack.
And let's not
again. I'm not sure if that's.
They got Washington coming up too after the Tampa game, right?
That's right. They have Washington. Well, yeah, and Washington has played well against them. But my point is, you're going to hear a lot of chatter leading up to that. If they're 2-1, Of course, they could win, 23-20. You're still going to have a little bit of chatter in this town, But either way, I think Tampa's going to keep the game close. I think they have the shot to win. They're going to play a lot of that all year. They're going to be really
Games.
tight defense. Don't turn the ball. That's the only reason why they've won. They're +6, I think, in turnover ratio.
He hasn't turned the ball over. Baker Mayfield hasn't turned the ball over.
He's usually good for a 2-interception game. This might be it. Either I hope not. I guess if I was a greedy person, I would say I'd like to see the Eagles win 23-20, and get the money. But I just think it's a tough spot for the Eagles, and it's tough to win on the road in this league unless the other team is really bad. And Tampa's not as bad as we thought.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned with the Eagles. Their secondary's banged up. I think, there's something to read in with the A.J. Brown Hurts issue because Sirianni played dumb, the babe in the woods routine. He didn't see anything when he walked over to A.J. Brown, and then the next series, they target him 3 times. I mean, that's what you force feed the ball. Goddard was non-existent. We still don't know who the primary back is, if there's going to be a primary back. So you're right. This might be a spot where you might even want to go Tampa Bay at home on the money line, right?
They have a chance. They have a decent chance to win, but games line 5, 4.5. If the market closes at 4, the money line risk you can. There's a correlation to it of how much you would want to risk. I'd have to take a look. I do like Tampa plus the points.
Any thought on now with Dallas losing Diggs? I know the line's up to 12.5. I mean, they played hard last week. I don't think they're tanking. They just, the Giants offense finally woke up. I mean, here's a game where I say it's the look but don't touch game. But what about Dallas going forward? I mean, how much stock do you put in the fact that Diggs is gone for the season? And from a betting standpoint, do you look at this and say, well, that might account for, a couple points here and there, but it's not like losing a quarterback. Like Burrow, anytime you lose a quarterback, there are certain quarterbacks, Burrow, Herbert, Hurts, Mahomes, Rodgers, you're out. That accounts for probably a 3.5 to 5 point swing with the line. But how much stock are you putting in the injury to Dallas? And do you still think they're, going to be one of the top teams coming out of the NFC?
Yeah, just because NFC is soft. Just because it's weaker than the AFC. I don't love McCarthy. I don't love Prescott. Dallas' defense is really good. I still think McCarthy is going to do something stupid in the playoffs when it matters. But they got a really good team, and they're going to get a lot of favorable matchups. I don't think that the injury that they've had is going to make a blip for this week. There will be some opportunities, I think, like the Giants last week, maybe to play second half, because teams that usually are in tank mode, like Arizona, they'll play tough for a half.
Yeah, which they did.
And second half, you're going to see a lot of arm tackles. It's just that the longer the season goes on, the more you're going to see that.
Pretty bad business decisions in September.
Yeah, unless guys are playing for where I've heard NFL players, NFL coaches say, where they've told players and teams that were in Arizona's situation when they get to week 10, 11, 12, 13, say, listen, we're watching a film, we're playing for your job.
Of course.
And that kind of spurs people to play a little bit. But the guys that are already, set with contracts and all, you're going to see a lot of
Olay.
A lot of Olay stuff. And it's a new coach, so he's going to get a pass this year. The quarterbacks in this year's draft, I mean, this isn't rocket science. Everybody knows what's going on. They don't want to lose games 48-3. They don't want Goodell to come in and start putting a microscope. So I do expect them to play tough first halves. Maybe there'll be some second half plays to play. Maybe you don't lay the 12 early on. I'm not a big fan of double-digit favorites in the year, in the era of parity. And of course, there's exceptions to every rule. Look at last night. You have a really good team playing, a team that's going to be bottom tier. I don't even think they'll be middle this year. And that leads to the other game I was going to mention that's a double-digit favorite is Kansas City. I actually like the Bears in this game. The line opened 13 and a half, went to 13 and went down to 12.
All the stuff going on.
Everybody hates Justin Fields. He came out. He said something about the coaches. Then he came back and apologized and all.
The defensive
My problem is, my thing isn't necessarily the Bears. I don't think Kansas City is all there yet. I don't think their offense is what it was. Of course, you have Mahomes. He can go crazy any minute. But I think this is a lot. I can see the Bears making this game relatively close simply because I don't think Kansas City is the Kansas City of, the 40-point Kansas City.
Yeah.
I get it. Game 1, Kelsey didn't play.
Yep.
Game 2, he got a lot of targets.
Yep.
But I think game 1, the line showed if you can take Kelsey out of the game,
that's it.
You kind of have a shot of keeping them kind of under wraps. Just think it's a lot to ask a team that's not coming out. They haven't come out like Miami or where they're busting out 30 points and 35 points. Of course, this could be the game, but I think if I was going to look at a double-digit dog, it would be the Bears. Just because I think also it's a narrative, but it's also a little bit human nature. The Bears have their backs against the wall. Fields has his back against the wall. He knows what they're saying. They're saying that he isn't the guy.
Right.
So sometimes you get 1 week of effort out of guys. Remember a couple years ago, the Colts went into Kansas City on a Thursday night, and they had Brissett as the quarterback, and they were getting 10 or 11. I think the line went to like 9 or something goofy, and they went in and won the whole game, dominated the game. Yeah. And it wasn't anything Brissett really did. It's just they just played real well, and they kind of took Kelsey out of the game. And I think they took, they scored early. If you remember that game, it was early in the season too, because that's when you can get the better teams is early in the year. This is November. I wouldn't even be looking at this game.
Prop joining us on a Football Friday edition of BYPQ here from our good friends over at Play It Against Sports. We mentioned the weather is still breaking. It's gorgeous. Get in there right now for all the golf clubs and the drivers. They give you some really good pricing, good rates. They got the Cleveland wedges and the drivers right there in the store. You can walk in, shop online, whatever's easier for you. All right, quickly, couple more minutes before I let you get out of here. I know the college football slate. I mean, we'll certainly get into our guy, Coach Prime, getting 21, I think it is, against Oregon. But how about a couple other games real quick? FSU, Clemson, you got Iowa, Penn State. You got 2 undefeated teams right there. Lying a little heavy with Penn State, 14 and a half. Anything stand out on the college football slate?
It was interesting. The 9 million people, I think I read, watch Colorado State, which for a West Coast game that's not even prime time is absolutely mind-blowing.
I couldn't stay awake. I wanted to get awake. I couldn't.
But people tuned in. I mean, people watch it. I stayed with it for as long as I could. I mean, it was 2 a.m. It was something crazy. But I watched it enough to see the stupid coach on Colorado State. He makes 2 absolutely brain dead. He doesn't go for it. 4th and nothing. I mean, you're Colorado State. I mean, you're in a rivalry game. Why?
Die with your boots.
There's nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And then they scored a touchdown. They don't go for 2. I almost feel like I'm beating a dead horse because I'm going to say something like this every week. You almost want, but it's never going to change. Head coaches are just risk averse by nature. And it's much easier for, I think, a head coach to go back and point to that game and be like, hey, there was other plays. And meanwhile, he could have controlled. They get the first down. They win the game. We're not even talking about Sanders this week. With that being said, everybody's so entrenched with it. It's kind of good for college football, I think. Alabama's lost. You know, all the other really good teams are playing cupcakes. This is the first week we really get to see. I mean, you got Notre Dame, Ohio State this week.
Yeah, I actually like Notre Dame. I can't stand
So
Notre
do
Dame
I.
in this game. I like them outright.
I like Notre Dame in the game also, but it's a game that nobody. I mean, I haven't even heard it mentioned. I mean, it's just. I guess the assumption is that Notre Dame's just going to lose, and that'll be that, and they'll have one loss, and we'll talk about it in November. But it's going to be interesting news if they win the game. Similarly, you have Ole Miss, who the line's under a touchdown against Alabama.
They're back issues.
Does Bama just? Do you see Bama just dumping this year? You know, are they going to be 7-5? I mean, this is an iffy thing. If Kiffin's ever going to beat Bama, he better get him now. Yeah. When South Florida had him in a storm, 3-3 or 17-3, whatever I was watching, where they stopped the game I was watching. So everybody talking about that. Instead, we're talking about prime. And the fact is, if you didn't look at the name of the two teams, if you just looked at the numbers, I mean, this line should actually be higher.
You're talking Colorado, Oregon.
Yeah, like Oregon through the first 3 games, they have a sub 300 defense. Now, I don't think they have an elite defense, but they could. I mean, if you get through 10 weeks, I don't care who you're playing. If you're giving up less than 300 total yards, or your defense, you have an elite defense.
Florida State's Florida State's one of those teams. They're giving up 246 total yards. They're
right.
But I know
before 3, in this month, you're like, okay, let's see. When you get through game 6, you don't know if they're elite. I know they're good though. So the fact I know they're good, and I know Colorado's is not. Colorado is going to be. They're going to give up chunks and chunks of yards, passing and rushing. They give up almost 200 yards rushing a game. Are they going to outscore Oregon?
That's what I was going to ask you. What's the better player? The point?
This could be. I mean, the total's what, 70? I
70.
think. Yeah, and Oregon's team total was hovering around like 47 or something. I think now it's like 45. It's good. All that's going to be close, but I could see. I could definitely see a 45-21 game here. If Colorado somehow keeps this game close, they lose like 52-45. To me, that's like a victory. That's how different the stats are.
How the line is next week.
Well, I think part of it will happens this game. If they show they can hang in there, because look at this line. This line's the same as TCU. Oregon is not TCU.
No.
If Oregon played TCU, they would crush TCU. So I think it's good for college football if you see some back and forth. Could we see a game? For some reason, it popped in my head years ago. When you had those dominant, really good offenses back with the Miami teams 20 years ago, where they had elite offense and defense. But if you see a 52-31 game, does Colorado look that bad? Maybe not. Maybe they don't look. It's bad. You're losing by 21, but there's bad 21-point losses. 24-3 is bad. Like what happened to their offense? But 52-31 could be your team just ran out of gas. You don't have enough guys.
How about lastly, real quick, Florida State Clemson?
It's gonna be a good game. I like Florida State in the game.
So do I. Very good defense.
They got a good defense. Plus, I think they're a better team right now than Clemson. But a lot of times in September that doesn't matter. You mess up. These guys they're kids. They're young. They're 21-year-old guys. They mess up early.
Right.
and they're not ready. Like LSU wasn't ready for Florida State. So maybe Florida State takes it back. I don't think so. I think they have the better team. I always go down with that. I think next week we can mention our baseball totals and see how we did. I think I'm going to lose the Marlins. I'm a little aggravated about that.
What do you think I feel? What happened to my friggin' Diamondbacks?
They played they played unbelievably, and then they kind of hit that wall, and then they really beat the Cubs up though. Holy shit! They won six or seven from the Cubs.
I don't care about their total prop. I had them winning the division.
Oh yeah, it's well. You know what's funny is the Padres I think need to go 9-0. It starts tonight.
Listen, they've been on a little bit of a run.
They have to win at least 8 of these last 9, and it has to start tonight. But what a goofy team! They've lost more one-run games, I think, than anybody in the last 4 years or something. I mean, their plus-minus differential, run differential is incredible for a team that's what are they 3 games under 5, 2 games under 5? They were the biggest feast or famine team all year. I don't want to say that I called it, but I just felt that their number was a little too high.
7 straight, though.
Under. I did play the Mets under, Yankees under. I did play the Phillies under as well, which is not going to win. But the Phillies total was high. I mean, they're going to get there, but the Phillies number was. I'm not even looking. I don't know where it's at, but I think it was 88.5, if I'm not mistaken. But then they had the Mets and the Yankees. The Mets and Yankees were like 94. We had some crazy numbers.
I was supremely confident the Mets and the Yankees. I told you this. They were not going to make the playoffs. I thought when the Mets lost closer early on, the Yankees, I just saw it coming. But San Diego, I'm telling you, man, if they figure out a way to snatch up one of those wild cards, and that's the thing, right? They won 7. I think they're 8-2 in their last 10, 7 straight. That lineup, it's like freaking
because they have to. Oh yeah, and Snell's pitching unbelievable.
Plus 82.
The problem is they got to leapfrog 2 teams though. That's the only problem. They got to get past the Cubs. They got to leapfrog Arizona and the Cubs. Do they skip one of them? I mean, it's possible. Well, it's such a stupid thing to say. It's possible. Of course, it's possible. Is it likely? I think it's more likely for them to go 8-1 than say anybody else right now playing in baseball. Maybe the Phillies are a little hot, but I don't have any faith in them because I think it's somewhere along the line they'll clinch. Of all the teams that really have to play, they're the most likely to win 8 of 9 because they have so much talent and they can get so hot. It's going to be fun to watch. It starts tonight, though.
Yeah.
I think they are. I mean, from last night, the line's pretty high. I think it's not as high as you think. 165, I think it is right now. 166. It was as low. It was a little bit lower than that. I think it was 157 or so. But that's kind of what they got to win. You know, they got to. I actually want to see them in the playoffs for the reasons you mentioned too. They got really good players. They have good hitters. They have good personalities. They kind of loafed this whole year.
Yeah, but you know what? You can't do that when you got other teams all of a sudden who, the light goes on. And but yeah, we'll start the first half of the show next week. We'll get into the baseball futures as always. Give a proper follow.
So I'll recap. I like Tampa. I do. I actually like the Tampa Eagles game over. I think Eagles are going to score points all year.
Like Rams?
I like the. Yeah, I like the Rams, and I also like the Saints. We didn't go into detail with that, but I think they're going to be an interesting team, the Saints, because they're not barn burners, but they have a really good defense.
And you also like the Chargers.
Yes. So I have 4 or 5 good plays. Tough plays because the lines aren't going to help you out except maybe in the Tampa game.
Yeah, well, that's the feast or famine. Do I want this one or do I want to put money in the pocket?
That's right.
All right, Prop. Always appreciate. Don't forget from our good friends over at Played Again Sports. Visit them online, 1450 Clemens Bridge Road. And as I mentioned, they've got everything you need, and they're really pushing their golf in the store. They've got some gorgeous Cleveland wedges and drivers in stock. They got obviously the spikes. They got you name it. Check them out. As always, give them a ring. We talk about it all the time right here on BYP, and hopefully you guys put a little coin in the pocket, as we like to say. Prop, always appreciate you, pal. Good luck with the bets. And as we like to
You
say,
too.
if you say it, play it, you'll back it and you'll stack it, pal. We'll do it next week.
All right.